Welcome. You join me today on my last tench fishing session of the season. It's time for me to move on to some other species. The tench have spawned. They're getting really tricky to catch now. I've not had anything this morning as yet, but I'm always hopeful. But what I'm going to do is take this opportunity to look back on the last 2 months fishing. So tench fishing for me is a big part of my season. It's a fish I particularly like fishing for, and I think that's probably down to location. As you can see behind me, I'm on a lovely big gravel pit, and Kent is famous for its gravel pits and it's famous for its big tench. So for me, as I say, it's a big part of my season, and as such I always book some extra holiday dates, and all through April I don't book any work in on a Monday and Tuesday, so I can come and have my 48 hours tench fishing once a week. And then at the end of May, start of June, when it's school half term, I actually have a holiday week, and I'd actually be down here Monday to Friday. So my tench fishing actually started at the very end of April this year, and I found it really tough going. And talking to some pals that have tench fished this season, everyone has found the same thing. I think we had such a cold spring and a mild winter. The tench they've been a bit different this year. They've not really fed hard, and the fishing's been tricky. So yes, so let's have a look at back at the season. So I started the very end of April. I had my first go. I had 48 hours booked, and I looked around the lakes, jumped in a swim that I'd fished before. I hadn't seen any fish. If you want to spot tench, you really need to be there first light. If they're going to roll at all, that's when you're going to see them, really early doors. I didn't get to the lake till the evening, so I had a little walk around, like I say, didn't see any fish, so I plumped in a swim that I've fished before, knew the features, knew the distances, got everything marked up, got the rods out, fished through to about 10 o'clock, reeled in for the night, set my alarm for 4:30, got up early and started working the feeders. And I was recasting my feeders every 30 to 45 minutes, and no fish. I fished hard. It's tiring work. I was fishing through to about 11 o'clock, constantly recasting those feeders. Nothing happened. And not only did I not catch anything, I was absolutely freezing. That the spring we had was so cold that the fish just weren't feeding. Saw nothing, got up early, like I say, saw nothing. I packed up and went home. You kind of have to accept defeat sometime and put that behind, come back the following week. So another week goes by, back down the lake on the Sunday evening. Didn't go on the same lake, went on another one, again, didn't see any fish in the evening. But the next morning I did have my first tench, and just looking at my records now, £6.12, first tench of the year, and that was 6th of May. Usual dendrobina on a hare, on a worm kebab. Again, I had 48 hours ahead of me. Only had the one bite, did stay to the next morning, didn't see a tench, didn't have any more. Really, really quiet. And I'm thinking, what's going on? You know, we've had a mild winter and a cold spring, but tench are always the first fish to kick off. They're always good for bites at that time of year. And I've had some massive hits. I've had some big fish. I've had 11 pounders in April in the past. So to not actually start catching well into May by now was a bit of a surprise. So that was that. Another week goes by and I'm back down the lake. Jumped on the same, no, I've actually gone to a different lake this time. So I'm looking for features, and I'm looking for gravel bars and plateaus, somewhere around 7, 8, 9 foot deep. And I think on the bars, fish are transiting along them, and on the little plateaus and humps of bumps, I very much view them as dining tables. So I try to bait up accurately on top of them and getting up early, starting working the feeders again. And I've jumped in this swim. It was on the back of the wind. We'd had a northeasterly blowing down the other end of the lake, and I've decided to jump in here, back of the wind. It's been good to me in the past, and found the feature out there 60 yards out. There's a nice bar, fishing on top of that, and I've had a bite, and the fish has actually gone down the back of the bar and cut me off. I don't know what it was, probably a tench. So I've had to have a little bit of a rethink. I don't remember that bar being as vicious in previous years, but it might be that there's some swan mussels, pea mussels, there's something out there anyway that's chafing and cutting the line. So what I did is I took that line off, put something a bit heavier on, because that line was all chafed up, and I've actually come back half a rod length. So now I'm fishing this side of the bar, and it's interesting because the bites have changed. So whereas I was getting a bite and then it was going tearing off, so I've actually tightened my drag up as well, so the free spool facility has been tightened up, so I'm not going to get the really fast rip off runs. What was happening now was when I got a bite, I'd have a couple of bleeps as the bobbin would pull up tight. Unless it's a big fish, it's not going to take a lot of line, and you quite often you get a drop back as the fish has dropped down the front side of the bar. And that's what happened, and I started to get some fish in, so it was really nice to start getting amongst them. It ended up being quite a nice session. I had 4 on the one day and then 5 on the next, including a very special fish that we're going to have a look at now. Yep, we're in. It's not fighting that hard. I'm just going to slacken that clutch off, because sometimes when they don't fight hard out in the lake, they can go a bit mental under the rod tip if you're not ready. Yeah, just like that. Come on. In she goes. Wow. $11.4. What a fish I've got in the net. Unbelievable. This is why you put in all the hours, all the hard work, all the silly o'clocks in the morning. Look at that. The shoulders on it. £11, 4 ounce of absolute prime tinker. It's not even fat yet. It's not even close to spawning. Amazing. That's my second biggest tench. Fantastic fish. So I just want to spend 2 or 3 minutes talking about the bait that I'm introducing as feed. For me, it's all about tiny particles. So what we've got here is some tinned hemp and some 1 and 2 mil pellets. I don't very often use
maggots and casters. I find they just attract eels, and you really don't want eels in your swim when you're tench fishing, because they can play havoc. So yeah, it's just a mixture of hemp and pellets, and what I've got is some Sonubait's natural hemp in the tin. It's cooked in the tin, so it retains all of its oils and juices, and the majority of it is split. And then the pellets I'm using is a mix of 1mm feed pellets. These are tiny little 1mm feed pellets. Everything seems to like krill, so I've got some 2mm krill pellets in there. And then, just by way of a change and the fact that they're brand new, I've got some 2mm marine green pellets. And like I say, when you look at that, that's just lots and lots of tiny particles that are going to keep tench in the swim for a long period of time. They're going to be grubbing around over that for ages. Now, the way I introduce it is I'll introduce it in the evening, quite late on, usually last thing at night, so say 10 o'clock. And I use the medium size spom, the midi spom. That's what I use to get the bait out. I don't like using the great big spoms. If you mess a cast up with a big one, you've left a big pile of bait where you don't want it. So I'd rather do an extra several casts of these and spread them about a little bit. I don't want everything landing on a dustbin lid. I'm going to bait up over an area the size of a pool table probably. So that's what I tend to use. Should I bait up in the morning, which is rare because I generally just rely on my feeders, but what I'll use is the little mini spom. It's probably 2 or 3 feederfuls, which is enough to keep some fish grubbing about. So there we go. That's what I use to introduce. And you've seen the mix. It's not complicated, just hemp and some 1 and 2mm pellets.
So for this year's tench fishing, I've been fishing in line, just being a little bit different. So 2 reasons being, firstly, everyone's fishing a helicopter rig, so in line is just that bit different. And secondly, this club has a tubing rule, so it's nice and easy to fish in line with a bit of tubing. So I've got a length of tungsten tubing, down to my tail rubber, then my grub feeder, then my size 11 quick chain swivel, and a hook length with a quick stop on the hair. What I do to make my grub feeder just that little bit different and to give it a bolt effect is I've got a little bit of my rig sleeve there. So with this rig sleeve, I've cut off about 1/3 of it, the pointy end, and I've slid it over the eye of the swivel, and then that pulls in to your grub feeder and gives it that bolt effect. So when the fish picks up the bait, it's straight away, it's feeling the weight of the feeder. As it goes to move off, frees the feeder, becomes free running. So that's how I've been setting this grub feeder up. And the actual hook length I'm using is just a short length of 10-pound smoke shield down to my favourite size 10 specimen hook. Short hair with a little quick stop. So that's the rig. That's the rig that I've caught all my tench on this year. And very effective it is too. So what a fantastic fish that was, 11 pound 4, one of my biggest ever tench. I've only had one bigger of 11 pound 7. So it makes all those early mornings, all the tarring hard graft that you have to put in sometimes, it just made it all worthwhile. So that was that. That 11 pound was actually my last fish of that session, but it was a good session. I'd finally found some fish. I'd had 9 over the 2 days. Once I'd worked out how to get them in by just making those few alterations that we've already discussed. So my next trip down was for my holiday week. I say holiday week, it was actually Monday to Friday I had booked off. So I got down on the Monday, was down early, managed to get a good walk round, jumped in a swim on this lake again. It was halfway down the lake this time, so I had a good vantage point, I could see everything. And got a little bit of bait out, got a few feeders out, and I had a tench in the evening. You don't get many in the evening, so that was a little bit unusual. That was a small one though, it was only 4 pounds, so it's one of my smallest fish out of this lake. and I thought this is looking good, it's hopeful for some bites. So that was Monday, got some bait out in the evening, the usual spod mix of the micro pellets and the hemp. Tuesday morning I'm up early, 4 o'clock this time because it's a little bit lighter. Thought I was going to get a bite then, probably a bit perch, pulling my bait about. So yeah, so up early on the Tuesday morning and nothing happened. Started working the feeders, regularly recasting. Didn't see hardly a thing. One fish, I think, from memory out in the middle, nowhere near where I was fishing. And it got to lunchtime and I'm already thinking of a move. You don't want to be waiting. I'm not one for waiting. I need to find the fish. So I started to actually pack down a bit of gear, and then out of the blue, 12 o'clock, I've had another bite, and it's a good fish. It's an 8.5 pounder. So that's kind of mugged me into staying for another night and a day, which I did. And the next morning, so we're up to Wednesday now, got up early, working the feeders again, same routine. I've had nothing, seen nothing, had nothing. As the day's gone on, it's just getting apparent that I need to move. Sure enough, started packing the gear down, and would you believe, as I'm packing the gear down, I've had one more fish, and it's a 6 pounder. And that was it though, but I'd already decided it's not enough. One bite every now and again is not enough for me to stay put when I know what I can catch. Looking back on the previous session, I'd had 5 one day, 4 the next, so I know what can be caught. So one fish a day isn't enough for me, so I needed to move, and that's what I did. So I packed up, I completely packed away, went round the other side of the lake trying to find some fish. There was guys tench fishing either end of the lake that hadn't had very much, so I knew they weren't in front of them, and I'd gone round the other side of the lake. Same routine again, found my spots. I was on some lovely little humps and bumps. Everything went right. Spoms were landing spot on. Didn't have any open up where they shouldn't have opened up. I was hitting the clip with my cast. Everything was perfect. Everything except the tench not playing ball. They weren't feeding for whatever reason. Nothing that day on the Wednesday, and nothing Thursday morning. So do you know what? I called that it. I couldn't see anything happening, so I actually called my session to an end, and that was the end of my holiday week. Next time I went, I was back on the Sunday night for 48 hours, different lake this time, and I went to a lake that I fished on my very first session back in April. Different part of the lake though, and by this time, of course, because several weeks had gone by, the weed had really come up because it's one of the shallower lakes on the complex, and the weed was really up, and I took a lot of time with a castable weed rake clearing a spot to be able to get some baits down to the bottom and get them presenting. I don't mind spending time clearing weed. It can be a good method of getting bites. I've done it in the past to really good effect. And the next morning, up as usual, working the feeders, and I've had one. I've had a 7.5 pounder. It was tricky to get in because it did come in with a lot of weed, and while I was there, the carp started spawning. They'd already shut the lake once for spawning, but the carp started again, and they weren't that far away from where I was fishing, and I was a bit on edge about fishing so close to spawning fish, so I actually decided to pack up, and I packed up from that lake and I moved to the lake next door and didn't catch a thing, and that basically was the end of my tench fishing. After that, so we're up to sort of the start of June, and the schools were back and I was really busy with my schools work. I didn't have any time off, so we're up to July now, and this is really the only time I've had to go tench fishing after that last session in June, start of June. So that's where we're at. Tench fishing's done for this season. I'm going to be moving on to something else. So I've had a little bit of a reflection. You've seen some nice fish. We've looked at the methods and tactics, and I'll see you next time.